This talk I'm giving now was previously delivered before the 159th Maritime Forum hosted by the DFA. So this was in February earlier this year, and it is adapted from the lectures of the National Security Advisor and Namria Deputy Administrator Karandang's lectures during our first the virtual presser. It is one of our online press briefings conducted for the National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will now begin our lecture for this afternoon on the whole of nation strategy in the West Philippine Sea. Okay. Unfortunately, we are not here to talk about, how many vessels are in the ocean or in the West Philippine Sea. We will not talk about those statistics or those details, but rather we are here to talk about what government is doing. We'd like to shed light on the efforts of the different agencies of government contributing to protecting our national interest in the WPS. We will follow this outline. We will start with the geographical setting, the maritime areas, national territory, and maritime domain. These have been discussed already in the previous talk, so we'll just go through them in passing. Then we'll go to the framework by which we undertake our whole of nation approach, and this is the National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea. It is a very vital coordinating machinery to ensure that all the stakeholder agencies, both from government and our NGO partners and communities, are able to coordinate to address our needs in the West Philippine Sea. Then we will look at our policy directives, our marine resources, the coordinated activities of government, and we'll end with a summary. Okay, so we'll start. Next, please. We already know this, the geographical scope of the West Philippine Sea. It comprises the maritime areas on the western side of the Philippine archipelago. So this is just a review. These are the areas which include the Luzon Sea, the waters around it, within and adjacent to the municipality of Kalayaan and Bao de Masinloc, also known as Scarborough Shoal. Okay, next. Just as a brief review also, next slide, we have our baselines. Okay, so this is the different maritime zones from the main archipelago of the Philippines. First, we have the baselines, the territorial baselines, archipelagic baselines. Next, we have the territorial sea, 12 nautical miles from the baseline. So until the territorial sea, this is our territory. We own it in a sovereign capacity. Okay, followed by the contiguous zone, which is 24 nautical miles from the baseline, and perhaps the most famous maritime zone, the exclusive economic zone, which stretches 200 nautical miles from the baselines. This is not strictly owned by us, according to UNCLOS, but we enjoy exclusive economic rights. We enjoy sovereign rights in this area. Okay, and below the exclusive economic zone, the seabed is the legal continental shelf. Okay, so this would be the resources that would be on or under the seabed. Afterwards, we can see those circles on the map. This was already discussed by our DOJ expert during her talk, but these are the territorial seas, 12 nautical mile territorial seas that surround our high tide elevations. Okay, so for those features that stay above water 24/7, they are entitled to their own territorial seas, 12 nautical miles, in pursuant rather to the arbitral award, citing, of course, the Law of the Sea Convention. Okay, next, it would be noteworthy to state that we also have territorial features within the municipality of Kalayaan outside our EEZ. Okay, kasama na po dyan ang Pag-asa. Pag-asa is outside the 200 nautical mile EEZ range, pero it is part of our territory. Okay, next. The yellow low tide features are those that are only above the surface during low tide. Okay, so they are not entitled to their own territorial seas unless they are attached to a high tide elevation. But we will not go into the details of that because it was already discussed in the previous topic. Okay, finally, we have the potential ECS corridor. This is the extended continental shelf, which we have the option of applying for on the western side of the Philippines. This would be very similar to what we already have on the east. The Benham, the rice, former Benham rice, now the Philippine rice on the eastern seaboard. So we have the option of doing this as well. Okay, next. We'd like also to take note and commend the municipality of Kalayaan for its municipal ordinance naming the sandbars, cays, and reefs within the 12 nautical mile area of Pag-asa. Okay, previously, these were not officially named, but we commend the local government of Kalayaan for this undertaking. So next slide, we see here the metes and bounds of the national territory of the Philippines as defined in the Constitution and our other national laws, rules, and regulations, and the maritime domain in accordance with the UNCLOS. So you have your Philippine rice under the extended continental shelf provisions. You have your legal continental shelf by default. We have a boundary with Indonesia for our EEZ to the south. This was entered into with Indonesia after long negotiations, and it is covered by a treaty. We have the archipelagic baselines based on RA 9522. Our EEZ, previously under PD 1599, but also now under UNCLOS, and the PD 1596, which established the municipality of Kalayaan. Okay, next. So the Philippines is surrounded by a vast expanse of water that is 7 times larger than its land area. Estimated to be 300,000 square kilometers of land versus 2,100,000 square kilometers of water. Long before the Philippines was named Las Islas Filipinas in 1543, the Philippines was already and remains an active maritime nation. And this is our reality. We see this in the unique design of the Vinta and the Balangay, the galleon trade, the dominance of the Philippine seafarers, and our consumption of fish, second only to rice. Okay, next. So it is no wonder then that the Philippines fought for the international recognition and acceptance of the archipelagic doctrine during the conferences of the law of the sea. The archipelagic doctrine was eventually embodied in Part 4 of the 1982 Convention on the Law of the Sea. Next, in 1994, our national marine policy was written to emphasize the country's archipelagic state and to balance the focus of economic development from land to our maritime domain and its resources. Our national marine policy is our first blueprint on the blue economy. In 2017, through Proclamation 316, in order to raise national consciousness on our maritime wealth and maritime and archipelagic state, President Duterte declared September as the Maritime and Archipelagic Nation Awareness Month, or MANAMO. This is a celebration that we are all very familiar with. Okay, next. So, in relation to our vast maritime resources, it has been the policy of government to push the Philippines to continue to modernize the land, sea, air, space, and cyber capabilities towards an enhanced surveillance, enforcement, and development capabilities in safeguarding our vast maritime domain and marine wealth, which is initially valued at 75.02 trillion pesos. So from this point, we'll proceed to our government's ongoing efforts to safeguard our sovereignty, our territorial integrity, and national patrimony in this vast maritime domain. Okay, next. Just days after his assumption of office in 2016, and while he was preparing for his first State of the Nation address, the Law of the Sea Tribunal, the Arbitral Tribunal, hearing Philippines versus China, issued its award on July 12, 2016 in favor of the Philippines. In his very first of the nation address on the 5th of July 2016, the President said, "We strongly affirm," and I quote, "we strongly affirm and respect the outcome of the case before the Permanent Court of Arbitration as an important contribution to the ongoing efforts to pursue a peaceful resolution and management of our disputes." Okay, next. After his first State of the Nation address, President Duterte convened the National Security Council, gathering all 4 living presidents of the country to discuss the arbitral award, among others. So first, former President Ramos was asked to lead an ice-breaking session, which led to the first state visit to China on October 16 to 21, 2016 by the President. It was during this visit that the bilateral consultation mechanism on the South China Sea was created as a confidence-building mechanism to discuss and explore other areas of cooperation. Next. Consistent with the award, during his bilateral meeting in China with President Xi Jinping, the President said that the arbitral award is final, binding, and not subject to appeal. In 2020, before the UN General Assembly, the President declared in no uncertain terms, "We must remain mindful of our obligations and commitment to the Charter of the UN, as amplified by the 1982 Manila Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of International Disputes. The Philippines affirms that commitment in the South China Sea in accordance with UNCLOS and the 2016 Arbitral Award. The award," he said, "is now part of international law beyond compromise and beyond the reach of passing governments to dilute, diminish, or abandon." Finally, he said, "We firmly reject attempts to undermine it." Okay, this was on the 22nd of September, 2020. Now, we move on to the framework that creates the National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea. The NTF-WPS became operational on March 17, 2016, through Memorandum Circular 94. The predecessor of the NTF was the Interagency Committee on the West Philippine Sea, created in 2011 and chaired by the Department of Foreign Affairs. In the first semester of 2017, the security of the Philippine rice and adjacent waters in the northern seaboard was challenged again by the intrusive activities of China. Accordingly, the President tasked the National Security Advisor to harmonize all government activities to ensure the security and development of the Philippine rice. In 2018, our government was surprised to find out that the International Hydrographic Organization Subcommittee on Undersea Feature Names approved China's naming of 5 undersea features which are located within the Philippine rice, which it claimed it discovered in a 2004 survey. The Department of Foreign Affairs, and we will talk about the DFA later, further protested that it did not issue any permit for China to conduct marine scientific research in the Philippine rice. To avoid further instances of this research without our permission, the President instructed on February 5, 2018, the Department of Foreign Affairs to put on hold all research activities by foreign entities in the Philippine rice until the government has completed its review of said permits. Accordingly, all permits to conduct research by foreign entities shall be reviewed and assessed by the National Security Advisor and approved by the President. The next. In 2019, when President Duterte visited Batanes after it was hit by an earthquake, he directed the military, maritime law enforcement, and other concerned agencies to conduct enhanced routine patrol, improve airports and seaports, and secure all the islands in the northernmost part of the Philippines' national territory. He reiterated the directive twice. The 40th Cabinet meeting on August 5, 2019, and during the joint AFP-PNP Command Conference on September 5, 2019. Okay. So now we will go on to the membership of the NTF-WPS. The NTF has 16 member agencies, namely the DFA, DND, DOJ, DILG, DENR, permit me, let me go through the list. DOE, Department of Agriculture, Trade and Industry, Transportation, Finance, NEDA, the National Coast Watch System, of course, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the PNP Maritime Group, the Philippine Coast Guard, BFAR, NICA, PCOO, and the DOST. So this is the group of agencies with mandates involving the WPS that meet every week to get updates and coordinate and discuss our activities and programs, ensuring that we protect our sovereignty and sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea. The National Security Advisor serves as its chairman, and the National Security Council Secretariat provides the admin and technical support. It is noteworthy, let's go back first. It is noteworthy to say that the NTF has close interaction with the University of the Philippines, both the Marine Science Institute and the National Institute of Geological Sciences. You know, they are very important, not just UP, but all our universities in the country, which have programs in the seas and the marine sciences, are involved in our government's programs in upholding our interests. The next slide. Still on the NTF, we can see here our organization on how the NTF operates structurally. These are the various levels of organization of the West Philippine Sea Task Force. It receives guidance from the President through the Cabinet and Cabinet Cluster on Security, Justice, and Peace. The NTF meets regularly every week to assess developments and incidents in the West Philippine Sea and the Philippine Rise. And this is where Area Task Force West and Area Task Force North play, a very vital role. Actually, the area task forces are, they are the ones who are really the main agencies or organizations that we look forward to hearing from in every meeting of the NTF-WPS. The developments and incidents, because of this organization, this coordinating machinery, developments and incidents can be elevated to the Cabinet Security Cluster and before the Executive Committee of the National Security Council. Appropriate committees of the legislature are also kept informed. Next. So these are our NTF-WPS areas of responsibility. It has two area-level task forces, which we refer to as ATF, which orchestrate and synchronize the efforts of the different government agencies in the area level. In June 2016, the Executive Secretary directed the AFP through the Western Command and the Northern Luzon Command to create, convene, and lead the area task forces respectively. In terms of geographic scope and area, The Area Task Force North, led by the AFP NOLCOM, covers Bajo de Masinloc or Panatag, Luzon Strait, the Philippine Rise, adjacent waters of our northern and eastern seaboards in the Philippine Sea. So that is the maroon horseshoe area above Luzon. As for our host today, Area Task Force West, ably led by the Western Command and, of course, by Admiral Enriquez, covers the Philippine-occupied islands, features, and waters in the municipality of Kalayaan, the coastal littoral areas surrounding Palawan up to the limits of our EEZ, and the Malampaya Natural Gas to Power Project. Okay? So, Area Task Force West covers the EEZ and, of course, our Kalayaan Island Group, the meets and bounds of our municipality of Kalayaan beyond the EEZ. Next. Presidential Decree 5096, dated June 11, 1978, established the municipality of Kalayaan, which is composed of the islands, reefs, and other maritime features of the Kalayaan Island Group. On the other hand, the term West Philippine Sea is defined in AO number 29, dated September 5, 2012, and covers the area to the right, rather to the left of the Philippines, to the west of the Philippines on the map. The West Philippine Sea corresponds to the maritime zones of the Philippines on the western side, again, including the maritime zones of the high tide features of the KIG. Okay, so even outside the EEZ, our high tide features there generate their own territorial seas. So we'll go into our positions in the Kalayaan Island Group, Municipality of Kalayaan, under the responsibility of Air Task Force West. The Philippines occupies and maintains our positions in 9 features of the Kalayaan Island Group. You have Parola Island, Pag-asa Islands, Panata, Kota, Likas, Patag, Lawak, Rizal Reef, and Ayungin Shoal. Okay, these I am sure are very familiar to the members of the audience from Area Task Force West. But outside the Kalayaan Island Group, we also have Bajo de Masinloc or Panatag Shoal, and this is to the west of Zambales. Bajo de Masinloc is within the area of responsibility of Area Task Force North. It is a lone coral atoll located on the apex of what appears to be a long dormant underwater volcano. It is 116 nautical miles west of Zambales and 448 nautical miles south of Hainan, China. So it is within our EEZ. It received its name, Scarborough, from the British ship HMS Scarborough, a ship that was wrecked on the reef around the time that the British conducted the very first systematic and accurate charting of the South China Sea in 1812. Okay, next. We move on to the Philippine Rise, also within the area of Air Task Force North. In April 12, 2012, the Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf validated the Philippines' submission to an extended continental shelf in the Benam or Philippine Rise region. The Commission, in essence, affirmed that the Philippines has exclusive sovereign rights to explore and exploit living and non-living resources found in the seabed and subsoil in its extended continental shelf in the Philippine Rise region. In 2017, May 16, to assert our sovereign rights and jurisdiction over the area, President Duterte renamed Benam Rise to Philippine Rise by virtue of EO 25. So next, in addition to the 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone and the continental shelf, the Philippines has 150 nautical miles of extended continental shelf by way of the Philippine Rise. It comprises 24.9 million hectares or 11.4 million hectares are our continental shelf inside our exclusive economic zone. Okay, next. To commemorate this event, in 2018, from 15 to 16 May, President Duterte graced a series of commemorative activities for the Philippine rice. And in this event, many firsts were achieved. It was the first offshore maritime event of the president and the first largest coordinated multi-agency and multi-spectrum event that featured the country's maritime scientific research. Aboard the BRP Davao del Sur, I think this is LD602, in Casiguran Bay, Aurora Province, the president brought together and sent off the country's best scientists led by UP and other government research institutions to an all-Filipino marine scientific research to the Philippine rice. Noteworthy in his keynote for this event, he said that I have complete faith. Next slide. I have complete faith in the capabilities of our world-class scientists, and I recognize the need to provide them with the necessary means to fulfill your mandate. Siguro, tig-isang barko talaga. And he was referring to the marine scientists of the Philippines, and the government's support, logistical and financial support for the conduct of their research. In fact, the vessel of the Marine Science Institute of UP is a product of this initiative. I think they are in Pag-asa now, conducting their rehabilitation of the research station there. And further to that, there are more vessels being procured for the University of the Philippines. ATF West and the Philippine Coast Guard and other law enforcement agencies conducted as well is, I think it's ATF North Solidary Patrol in the Philippine rice last June 20, this year, last June 12, earlier this year. Okay, next slide. The president also signed Proclamation 489, which established the Philippine Rice Marine Resource Reserve. So it has two zones, the strict protection zone with an area of 49,684 hectares, limited to scientific study, and a special fisheries management area of 302,706 hectares for the sustainable development and regulated utilization of resources. Okay, so we will now move on to the last part of the presentation, and these are the policy directives of the president. And these are the areas by which the whole of nation approach is being undertaken by the government. Okay, the policy directives, first is to invest in a credible defense posture. Okay, next slide, modernization of land, air, sea, and space and cyber capabilities. Go back first, please go back. There you go. Note that the Philippine expenditures, we go to the table, please. Cesar, table. Yeah. Note that the Philippine expenditures for defense have gone down from a high point, 2.71% in 1980, so GDP, to only 0.96 in 2019. But we are optimistic that our spending on our assets are improving. Okay, next slide. So it has been a priority of this government to strengthen our maritime law enforcement capabilities. The Philippine Coast Guard, the Philippine Navy, the BFAR, they are all receiving new logistical assets for the enforcement of our law in the maritime zones. Okay, next. We are upgrading our facilities in all our occupied maritime areas. Those of you in Pag-asa will note that this is an old picture because the construction of the harbor cited or identified here is already more advanced than what is depicted in this picture. I also note that the runway, the airstrip, is also being improved, as well as other logistical facilities on the island. Next, it is a policy directive to improve the welfare of the community, such as the residents in the municipality of Kalayaan, Palawan, and island communities in our northern seaboard. Okay, next, we are combating illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Okay, some of you may have noted that the DABFAR issued a statement condemning the illegal presence of foreign fishing vessels in our maritime zones. And they are now in the process of coordinating with the DFA for the filing of additional diplomatic protests. Okay, next. We are conducting a robust marine scientific research program, including the acquisition of marine scientific research vessels for our National Academic Research Fleet to be led by the University of the Philippines Marine Science Institute and the National Institute of Geological Sciences. Okay, next. We uphold marine environment protection, conservation, and sustainable development of our marine resources. If we look at the next slide, the coral reefs in the West Philippine Sea cover an estimated area of 600 to 1,000 square kilometers, which is about 30% of the total reef area in the Philippines. Most of these areas are found in the municipality of Kalayaan, which is also a source of coral and fish larvae for the neighboring reef systems along the Western Palawan coast as far as the Sulu Sea and the Indochina coast. Okay, next. The West Philippine Sea also serves as fishing ground for thousands of Filipino fisher folk in the following regions with the provinces facing it. So in Region 1, you have 84,000 from the Ilocos provinces, La Union and Pangasinan. From Central Luzon, Batanes, and Zambales, you have 41,000 fisher folk. From Metro Manila, you have 10,000. Okay, from 4A, Batangas and Cavite, you have 62,257. Mimaropa, you have 96,176. Total for the West Philippine Sea is 294,730. You know, for this reason, it is the policy of government to really encourage our fishermen to go out and fish in the West Philippine Sea. The DABFAR has their programs to support, you know, the fishing communities and the fishing industry, but we really encourage our fishermen to go out and fish, both in the municipality of Kalayaan and in Bao de Masinloc. Some of us may recall when we had our Coast Guard patrolling the Holian Felipe Reef a few months back. They were pleased to find a fishing boat all the way from Batangas out there in the municipality of Kalayaan. So we would like to encourage more of our fishermen to go out and fish. Okay, next. In 2019, the total fisheries production, including seaweed, was 4.4 million metric tons. But in the West Philippine Sea for the same year, it's only 323,684 metric tons, which is around 77.33% of our total fisheries production. Okay, this is the combined production of our marine capture fisheries of both municipal and commercial fisheries. So we need to, you know, we need to go out and fish, is what we are telling our fisher folk. And rest assured that the Coast Guard the BFAR, and the Philippine Navy are patrolling our seas to ensure the safety and protection of our fishermen. Next slide. The DABFAR has also been supporting the industry by installing fish aggregating devices or payaws in strategic locations in the both areas of Bao de Masinloc in Kalayaan. Payaws attract tuna and other fishes, thereby greatly reducing time spent searching for fish. Okay, next, policy directive to promote oil and gas exploration and development. Okay, next slide. So here is an estimate from the Department of Energy in millions of barrels in both oil and gas for undiscovered, discovered. You have 6,000 undiscovered, 6 billion barrels with an actual production only of 79 million. Whereas for gas, you have 7.108 billion with an actual production only of 2,318. So there are resources that are really waiting for us to exploit, noting that these are in our exclusive economic zone. Okay, next policy directive. Oh, before we move on, let's go back to the slide in the previous slide. I just like to note that the DFA and DOE in dealing with foreign entities, would like to enter into arrangements with the Philippines for oil exploration and drilling. The DFA and the DOE have been very firm in their position that all of these contracts must be governed by Philippine law, and I commend them for that. They are consistent in that policy. So if any foreign country would like to work with the Philippines, the arrangements have to be under the jurisdiction of the Philippines and governed by Philippine law. And if this is not acceptable to the prospective foreign partners, then our DFA and DOE will not allow it to happen. Okay, next slide. For the next directive, to secure and develop all our islands, including the Philippine Rice and the adjacent waters of our northern and eastern seaboards in the Philippine Sea. We are joined here now by ATF West, but ATF North is also a busy piece of ocean in the north, as we may know. We have a border with Taiwan, and it is the gateway to the Pacific. So Area Task Force North is always busy. They have established their sovereign markers. They have their desalination plant in our islands in Batanes to improve the conditions of our troops as well as our fishermen in the areas. Next slide. To strengthen bilateral relations, regional engagements, and other confidence-building measures and mechanisms with our regional partners and allies. And this has, what the president been doing from the start with his independent foreign policy. And until now, we will see this with our increased engagements, with other stakeholders in the region. Our cooperation mechanisms with our international partners only serve to improve the rule of law in the West Philippine Sea. Okay. Next slide. It is noteworthy to mention that under the leadership of the National Coast Watch Council, we also have our Coordinated National Marine Scientific Research Initiatives and related activities in Philippine waters. This is we call this CONMIRA. So this is our program for marine scientific research, which we conduct every year. not just in the West Philippine Sea. This is for all over our country, all our oceans and seas, wherein our different agencies are able to coordinate under one umbrella, for the streamlining of our efforts in the conduct of our marine science research. Okay, so let's skip to the next slide. Let's skip first, Attorney Ong. Next slide, okay? I just like to mention that we have we have 3 new active members in the NTF. We have the Philippine Space Agency, and they are very helpful in providing data on developments in the WPS, because we are subscribed to international satellites for the monitoring of our maritime zones. We also have now regularly attending Attorney Mata from the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development. And we welcome, of course, the insights of his organization, having, being one of the foremost stakeholders in Palawan and in the region. And I just like to mention that recently the PNP established their very first police detachment in Pag-asa. I don't know if it's the first time, but it may be the first time in a long time. And this for me is a good move because, if you have local law enforcement agencies patrolling your municipal waters, then that is an assertion of our administration over the waters around Pag-asa. Okay, so let's go back to the summary slide, Attorney Cesar. So, in summary, the West Philippine Sea is a vital part of our maritime domain. It is rightly the Philippines' maritime entitlement under UNCLOS found in the western seaboard of the Philippine archipelago. The area is endowed with still undetermined and untapped natural resources. The government is coordinating efforts of different agencies, upgrading its marine research fleet, supporting Filipino fishermen and marine scientists, and employing all possible means to protect this vital national patrimony. Okay? And final update. I already mentioned it earlier. The Marine Science Institute is now undertaking an expedition to improve and refurbish the Pag-asa Island Research Station on the Pag-asa main island, which will be used to conduct oceanographic and biodiversity surveys in the territory. Okay, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I end my brief lecture. Thank you for your kind attention.